Here's the uncomfortable truth about most bands that break up. It's not usually because someone slept with someone else's ex. It's not because the guitarist decided to move to a different city or across the country. It's not even because someone genuinely wanted to quit. Most bands break up because someone felt disrespected, ignored, taken for granted, or weren't really included instead of having a real conversation about it. They let it build up until it becomes personal. And by the time they try to talk about it, the relationship is already too damaged to fix. And the worst part, most of the cases, the actual problem could have been solved in about 10 minutes if they'd had the right framework to have the conversation. I've watched this happen dozens of times. I've been a part of it. Hell, I even had 3 conversations last week with bands that are having difficult situations and need help having conversations, which actually led to this. But I've also been a part of bands that have survived tension that should have destroyed them because we figured out how to talk through it like professionals instead of friends having their feelings hurt or in a fight. Today, I'm going to give you the exact framework that I use multiple times for having difficult conversations in a band setting. So the next time something feels off, you have a way to address it that doesn't blow up the whole thing. Before we get into it, this is part of a much bigger system that I teach called the Amateur to Pro Music Artist Operating System, which is all about treating your band like a business, operating with the kind of structure that serious careers actually require. And I've got a free community on Skool where we work through all of this together. It's free to join. The link's in the bio. Let me start by telling you what doesn't work because most musicians default to this and it makes it everything worse. The typical band conflict conversation usually goes something like this. Someone's frustrated. They hold it in. They hold it in some more. Then one day it comes out sideways, usually in a group text or right before rehearsal or right after a show when everyone's tired, emotions are already high. And the way it comes out is usually something like this. You never listen to anyone else's ideas. You're always late. You don't care about this band as much as the rest of us do. Broad, accusatory, emotional, and personal. And the person on the receiving end immediately gets defensive because what they hear is a personal attack on their character. So they defend themselves or they deflect or they fire back with their own grievances. And now you're not solving the original problem. You're in a fight about who's a better person or who cares more or who's been wronged more. This is not a band conversation. This is a relationship meltdown. And it doesn't have to be. The reason this happens is not because musicians are bad at communication. It's because most people have never been taught a structure for how to separate specific behavior from a person's identity or how to express the real impact of something without making it sound like it's some form of blame. Fortunately, there are frameworks for this, and they come from leadership and management training, not necessarily from therapy or conflict resolution workshops. Because the goal here isn't to process feelings. The goal is to solve a problem so the band can keep operating. The first framework I want to share with you is called Seeking to Understand, or STEW. I often call it, hey, we need to have a STEW conversation. This is not a conversation where you're trying to win an argument or try to prove that you're right. It's a conversation where your only job is to figure out what the other person is actually thinking and why they're making decisions that they're making. Here's how it works. You start by asking an open-ended question that are genuinely curious, not rhetorical or passive aggressive. A bad example is, why do you always show up late? Instead, say something like, I've noticed you've been running late a lot at rehearsals. What's going on? The second version gives them the space to actually answer without immediately feeling attacked. Maybe they're dealing with a work schedule that changed. Maybe they didn't realize it was a pattern. Maybe they're losing interest and this is an early signal. You don't know until you ask. Your job here is to listen, not to prepare your rebuttal while they're talking, not to interrupt with your side of the story. Just actually sit and listen to what they have to say and reflect it back to them to make sure you understand. So an example of a reflection back is, So it sounds like your new job schedule is making it harder for you to get here on time. Is that right? If they confirm, now you're not assuming intent. You're operating with a shared reality. And from there, you can move into problem solving. Okay, knowing that, what would actually work better? Should we move rehearsal time? Should we start without you and jump in when you get here? What makes sense? Notice what's happening here. You're not making it personal. You're not attacking their commitment. You're treating it like a logistics problem because most of the time, that's exactly what it is. A stew conversation is especially powerful when you think someone's making a bad decision and you want to challenge it without creating conflict. If your drummer wants to book a gig that you think is a terrible fit for the band, instead of saying, that's a stupid idea, lead with curiosity. Say something like, walk me through why you think this gig makes sense. What are you seeing that I'm not? Maybe they have a reason you didn't consider. Maybe they don't. And once they explain it out loud, they realize it themselves. Either way, you're operating like professionals instead of like people protecting their egos. Now, the second framework is called Situation Behavior Impact, or SBI. This one is for when you need to give feedback about something that's not working and you want to do it in a way that's direct, clear, and doesn't make the other person feel defensive. Here's the structure. First, start with the situation. Describe the specific context where the behavior happened, not you always or you never. Specific moment in time. Behavior is where you describe the actual observable behavior within that situation, not your interpretation of it, not what you think their intent was, just what they did or said, just the facts. And then lastly, the impact. Then you describe the effect it had on you, the band, or the outcome. Let me show you how this looks in practice. A bad version, you never send your tracks on time. You're always late, and it's holding the whole band back. You clearly don't care about this project as much as the rest of us. In that version, that's going to start a fight because never and always are exaggerations. You don't care is a judgment about their commitment, and holding the whole band back makes it sound like they're sabotaging the group. Now, let's take a look at the same example, but using the SBI feedback framework. We had a deadline last Tuesday to get all the guitar tracks submitted so we could start mixing. I didn't get yours until Friday. When that happens, that pushes the mixing timeline back and makes it harder for us to hit our release schedule. See, it's the same core issue, totally different delivery. You name the situation. Last Tuesday's deadline for guitar tracks. You name the behavior. The tracks arrived late on Friday instead of Tuesday. You name the impact. Pushing the mix timeline back affects the release schedule. Notice what you didn't do. You didn't say, you don't care. You didn't say, you're always late. You didn't make it about their character or their level of commitment. You made it about the specific deadline, a specific delay, and the specific consequence it had on the project. And that makes it way easier for the other person to respond without getting defensive because you're not attacking them. You're just naming what happened and the effect that it had. If they have a reason, for instance, maybe their interface died and they had to spend a couple of days troubleshooting, now they can tell you. And if they don't have a good reason, they can just acknowledge it and commit to communicating if something's going to be late. Either way, you solved it. No drama, no lingering resentment. And you made it a team effort. It wasn't one accusing one of another. It was you sharing your observations and you both working together to a solution moving forward. Now, here's another thing that most bands get wrong. Timing. If you're angry, you're not ready to have this conversation. If the other person is in the middle of a stressful situation, it's not the right time. If you're trying to do this in a group setting where the people are going to pile on or take sides, that's going to go badly. The best time to have a conversation is when you're calm, when the other person has a safe space to actually engage, and when it's one-on-one, unless the issue affects the whole band and needs to be addressed collectively. Here's the other thing. Not everything needs to be a conversation. If someone shows up 5 minutes late once, you don't need to pull them to the side and run an SBI conversation with them. Some things you just let go. The question is whether it's a pattern, whether it's affecting the work, and whether it's something that is going to fester if you don't address it. If the answer to all three is yes, then have the conversation. If not, let it go and focus on the work and find the appropriate time. Now, here's why this matters and why I'm teaching this on this channel about music business and not just interpersonal skills. Bands are small teams, and small teams live or die based off of trust, communication, and whether people feel respected. If you can't have difficult conversations, then every small issue becomes a potential breaking point. If you can have difficult conversations, then you can actually grow through conflict instead of being destroyed by it. The best bands I've worked with weren't the ones that never had tension. They were the ones that knew how to talk through it, resolve it, move forward without letting it poison the whole dynamic. And that's the skill. It's not something you're born with. It's something you have to practice. It's going to be awkward at first, but after a while, even if they recognize what you're doing, they're going to take the time to listen to you, and it will help grow the band from there. If this changes how you're thinking about band communication, here's what I want you to do. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had a band conflict that you think could have been avoided with a better conversation? I read all the comments and I answer all of them. And your answer might even be part of a future video. If you want a full breakdown on how to build a band that operates like a real business with clear roles, communication systems, decision-making frameworks, all of it, that's exactly what we work through inside the Amateur to Pro Music community on Skool. It's free to join. Link is in the description. Also, subscribe if you like this kind of content and want to see more of it. This channel is for musicians who are serious about building something that lasts. I'll see you on the next one.